Om Ajnanatimirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Dhena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namah.
After offering obeisances to the direction in which Ananta, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, had disappeared, Chitraketu began traveling in outer space as the head of the Vidyadharas. Text 2 and 3. Being praised by great sages and saints, and by the inhabitants of Siddhaloka and Charanaloka, Chitraketu, the most powerful mystic yogi, wandered about enjoying life for millions of years. With bodily strength and senses free from deterioration, he traveled within the valleys of Sumeru mountain, which is the place of perfection for various kinds of mystic power. In those valleys he enjoyed life with the women of Vidyadharaloka by chanting the glories of the Supreme Lord, Hari. Purport. It is to be understood that Maharaja Chitraketu, although surrounded by beautiful women from the Vidyadharaloka, did not forget to glorify the Lord by chanting the holy name of the Lord. It has been proved in many places that one who is not contaminated by any material condition, who is a pure devotee, engaged in chanting the glories of the Lord, should be understood to be perfect. Text 4 and 5. One time, while King Chitraketu was traveling in outer space on a brilliantly effulgent airplane given to him by Lord Vishnu, he saw Lord Shiva surrounded by siddhas and charanas. Lord Shiva was sitting in an assembly of great saintly persons and embracing Parvati on his lap with his arm. Chitraketu laughed loudly and spoke within the hearing of Parvati. Oops. Purport. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this connection, Bhaktim bhutim harir datva swavichedanubhutaye devyak shapinabritratvam nitvatam swantike nayat. Approval? Okay. The purport is that the Supreme Personality of Godhead wanted to bring Chitraketu to Vaikuntha Loka as soon as possible. The Lord's plan was that Chitraketu be cursed by Parvati to become Vritrasura, so that in his next life he could quickly return home back to Godhead. There have been many instances in which a devotee acting as a demon has been brought to the kingdom of God by the mercy of the Lord. For Parvati to be embraced by Lord Shiva was natural in a relationship with husband and wife. This was nothing extraordinary for Chitraketu to see. Nonetheless, Chitraketu laughed loudly to see Lord Shiva in that situation, even though he should not have done so. Thus he was eventually cursed, and this curse was the cause of his returning home back to Godhead. So there's the answer to the question that was how many chapters ago?
Text number 6. Chitraketu said, Lord Shiva, the spiritual master of the general populace, is the best of all living entities who have accepted material bodies. He enunciates the system of religion. Yet how wonderful it is that he is embracing his wife, Parvati, in the midst of an assembly of great saintly persons. Lord Shiva, whose hair is matted on his head, has certainly undergone great austerities and penances. Indeed, he is the president in the assembly of strict followers of Vedic principles. Nonetheless, he is seated with his wife on his lap in the midst of saintly persons and is embracing her as if he were a shameless, ordinary human being. Purport. Chitraketu appreciated the exalted his wonder. Shiva. 9. Srila Shukadev Goswami continued, My dear king, after hearing Chitraketu's statement, Lord Shiva, the most powerful personality whose knowledge is fathomless, simply smiled and remained silent and all the members of the assembly followed the Lord by not saying anything. Purport. Chitraketu's purpose in criticizing Lord Shiva is somewhat mysterious and cannot be understood by a common man. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, however, has made the following observations. Lord Shiva, being the most exalted Vaishnav and one of the most powerful demigods, is able to do anything he desires. Although he was externally exhibiting the behavior of a common man, not following etiquette, such actions cannot diminish his actual position, exalted position. The difficulty is that a common man seeing Lord Shiva's behavior might follow his example, as stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.21. Yad yad acharati shreshtas tat tadevi tarojana sayat pramanam kurute lokas tad anuvartate. Whatever action a great man performs, common men follow, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. A common man might also criticize Lord Daksha, who suffered the consequences for his criticism, and whatever standards he sets by exemplary acts, all the world pursues. A common man might also criticize Lord Shiva, like Daksha, who suffered the consequences for his criticism. King Chitraketu desired that Lord Shiva cease this external behavior so that others might be saved from criticizing him and thus becoming offenders. If one thinks that Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, is the only perfect personality, whereas the demigods, even such demigods as Lord Shiva, are inclined to improper social affairs, he is an offender. Considering all this, King Chitraketu was somewhat harsh in his behavior with Lord Shiva. Lord Shiva, who is always deep in knowledge, could understand Chitraketu's purpose, and therefore he was not at all angry. Rather, he simply smiled and remained silent. The members of the assembly surrounding Lord Shiva could also understand Chitraketu's purpose. Consequently, following the behavior of Lord Shiva, they did not protest. Instead, following their master, they remained silent. If the members of the assembly thought that Chitraketu had blasphemed Lord Shiva, they would certainly have left at once, blocking their ears with their hands. Text 10. Not knowing the prowess of Lord Shiva and Parvati, Chitraketu strongly criticized them. His statements were not at all pleasing, and therefore the goddess Bharati, being very angry, spoke as follows to Chitraketu, who thought himself better than Lord Shiva in controlling the senses. Purport. Transgressing social customs. It is said, Tejiyasam the sun, although it evaporates urine from the street. The most powerful cannot be criticized by any ordinary man, or even by a great personality. Chitraketu should have known that Lord Shiva, although sitting in that way, was not to be criticized. The difficulty was that Chitraketu, having become a great devotee of Lord Vishnu, Sankarsana, was somewhat proud at having achieved Lord Sankarsana's favor, and therefore thought that he could now criticize anyone, even Lord Shiva. This kind of pride in a devotee is never tolerated. A Vaishnava should always remain very humble and meek and offer respect to others. Trinad api sunichena tarot api shahishnuna amanina manadena kirtaniya sadahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. A Vaishnava should not try to minimize anyone else's position. It is better to remain humble and meek and chant the Hare Krishna mantra. The word Nirjitatma Bhimanine indicates that Chitraketu thought himself a better controller of the senses than Lord Shiva, although actually he was not. Because of all these considerations, Mother Parvati was somewhat angry at Chitraketu. Yes, sir. Here you go. We'll pass you the microphone and you'll be all set.
There seem to be two perspectives here. One is that Chitraketu was appreciating Lord Shiva for being able to be sitting with his wife amongst the sages. And another one is that explained in this purport that somehow he felt himself a better controller of the senses than Lord Shiva. So, and yeah, can this clarified by the sadhus?
I think the answer has been given already. It says the Lord wanted him to come back as soon as possible. And so he arranged this. He arranged for this kind of misunderstanding. And later on we'll see that Shiva didn't actually take offense at all, and he chastises Parvati afterwards. So this is Krishna, Lord Vishnu, doing this. Text 12, or text 11. The goddess Parvati said, "Alas, has this upstart now received a post from which to punish shameless persons like us? Has he been appointed ruler, carrier of the rod of punishment? Is he now the only master of everything?" 12. Alas, Lord Brahma, who has taken his birth from the lotus flower, does not know the principles of religion, nor do the great saints like Bhrigu and Narada, nor the four Kumaras headed by Sanat Kumara. Manu and Kapila have also forgotten the religious principles. I suppose it to be because of this that they have not tried to stop Lord Shiva from behaving improperly. 13. This Chitraketu is the lowest of Kshatriyas, for he has impudently overridden Brahma and the other demigods by insulting Lord Shiva, upon whose lotus feet they always meditate. Lord Shiva is personified religion and the spiritual master of the entire world, and therefore Chitraketu must be punished. Purport. All the members of the assembly were exalted brahmanas and self-realized souls, but they did not say anything about the conduct of Lord Shiva, who was embracing the goddess Parvati on his lap. Chitraketu nonetheless criticized Lord Shiva, and therefore the opinion of Parvati was that he should be punished. Text 14. This person is puffed up because of his achievements, thinking, "I am the best." He does not deserve to approach the shelter of Lord Vishnu's lotus feet, which are worshipped by all saintly persons, for he is impudent, thinking himself greatly important. Purport. If a devotee thinks that he is very much advanced in devotional service, he is considered puffed up and unfit to sit beneath the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet. Again, this instruction by Lord Chaitanya is applicable. Trinadapi sunichena tadorapi sihishnuna amanina manadena kirtani yaksarahari. One should chant the holy name of the Lord in a humble state of mind, thinking oneself lower than the straw in the street. One should be more tolerant than a tree, devoid of all sense of false prestige, and ready to offer all respect to others. In such a state of mind, one can chant the holy name of the Lord constantly. Unless one is humble and meek, one cannot qualify to sit at the lotus feet of the Lord. 15. O impudent one, my dear son, now take birth in a low sinful family of demons, so that you will not commit such an offense again toward exalted saintly persons in this world. Purport. One should be very careful not to commit offenses at the lotus feet of Vaishnavas, of whom Lord Shiva is the best. While instructing Srila Rupa Goswami, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu described an offense at the lotus feet of a Vaishnava as Hati Mata, a mad elephant. When a mad elephant enters a nice garden, it spoils the entire garden. Similarly, if one becomes like Mother Parvati was justified in punishing Chitraketu, For Chitraketu impudently criticized the Supreme Father, Mahadeva, who was the father of the living entities conditioned within this material world. The goddess Durga is called Mother, and Lord Shiva is called Father. A pure Vaishnava should be very careful to engage in his specific duty without criticizing others. This is the safest position. Otherwise, if one tends to criticize others, he may commit the great offense of criticizing a Vaishnava. Because Chitraketu was undoubtedly a Vaishnava, he might have been surprised that Parvati had cursed him. Therefore the goddess Parvati addressed him as Putra, or son. Everyone is the son of Mother Durga, but she is not an ordinary mother. As soon as there is a small discrepancy in a demon's behavior, Mother Durga immediately punishes the demon so that he may come to his senses. This is explained by Lord Krishna in Bhagavad Gita 7.14. Daiviyesha gunamayi mamamaya duratyaya mameva ye prabhajante mayametam tarantite. This divine energy of mine, consisting of the three modes of material nature, is difficult to overcome, but those who have surrendered unto me can easily cross beyond it. To surrender to Krishna means to surrender to his devotees also, for no one can be a proper servant of Krishna unless he is a proper servant of a devotee. Chadya Vishnavaseva Nistara Payechikeba. Without serving a servant of Krishna, one cannot be elevated to being a servant of Krishna himself. Therefore Mother Parvati spoke to Chitraketu exactly like a mother who says to her naughty child, "My dear child, I am punishing you so that you won't do anything like this again." This tendency of a mother to punish her child is found even in Mother Yashoda, who became the mother of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Mother Yashoda punished Krishna by binding him and showing him a stick. Thus it is the duty of a mother to chastise her beloved son, even in the case of the Supreme Lord. It is to be understood that Mother Durga was justified in punishing Chitraketu. This punishment was a boon to Chitraketu, because after taking birth as the demon Vritrasura, he was promoted directly to Vaikuntha.
Text 16. Sri Shukadev Goswami continued, "My dear King Parikshit, when Chitraketu was cursed by Parvati, he descended from his airplane, bowed before her with great humility, and pleased her completely. Chitraketu said, 'My dear mother, with my own hands folded together, I accept the curse upon me. I do not mind the curse, for happiness and distress are given by the demigods as a result of one's past deeds.'" Purport. Since Chitraketu was a devotee of the Lord, he was not at all disturbed by the curse of Mother Parvati. He knew very well that one suffers or enjoys the results of one's past deeds as ordained by Daiva Netra, superior authority, or the agents of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He knew that he had not committed any offense at the lotus feet of Lord Shiva or the goddess Parvati, yet he had been punished, and this means that the punishment had been ordained. Thus the king did not mind it. A devotee is naturally so humble and meek that he accepts any condition of life as a blessing from the Lord. Tate nukampam susamikshamanu. A devotee always accepts punishment from anyone as the mercy of the Lord. If one lives in this conception of life, he sees whatever reverses occur to be due to his past misdeeds, and therefore he never accuses anyone. On the contrary, he becomes increasingly attached to the Supreme Personality of Godhead because of his being purified. Suffering is also a process of purification. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this connection that one who has developed Krishna consciousness and who exists in love with Krishna is no longer subject to suffering and happiness under the laws of karma. Indeed, he is beyond karma. The Brahma Samhita says, "Karmani nirodhati kintu cha bhakti bhajam." A devotee is free from the reactions of his karma because he is taken to devotional service. This same principle is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 14:26. Sagunan samatityaitan pramabhuhya yukulpate. One who is engaged in devotional service has already been freed from the reactions of his material karma, and thus he immediately becomes Brahmabhuta, or transcendental. This is also expressed in Srimad Bhagavatam 1.2.21. Shiyante chasya karmani. Before attaining the state, he does not discriminate between different positions in the material world. A devotee is always eager to return home back to Godhead and remain there as the Lord's associate. This ambition becomes increasingly fervent in his heart, and therefore he does not care about material changes in his life. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur comments that Maharaj Chitraketu, being cursed by Parvati, should be considered the mercy of the Lord. The Lord wanted Chitraketu to return if possible, and therefore he terminated all the reactions of his past deeds. Acting through the heart of Parvati, the Lord, who is situated in everyone's heart, cursed Chitraketu in order to end all his material reactions. Thus Chitraketu became Vritrasura in his next life and returned home back to Godhead. 18. Deluded by ignorance, the living entity wanders in the forest of this material world, enjoying the happiness and distress resulting from his past deeds, everywhere and at all times. Therefore, my dear mother, neither you nor I am to be blamed for this incident. Purport as confirmed in Bhagavad Gita 3.27. Prakrite kriyamanani gunai karmani sarvashaha hankara vimutatma kartaham iti manyate. The bewildered soul, under the influence of the three modes of nature, thinks himself the doer of activities that are in actuality carried out by nature. Actually, a conditioned soul is completely under the control of material nature. Wandering here and there, always and everywhere, he is subjected to the results of his past deeds. This is carried out by the law of nature, but one foolishly thinks himself the doer, which in fact he is not. To get free from the karma chakra, the wheel of the results of one's karma, one should take to bhakti marg, devotional service or Krishna consciousness. That is the only remedy. Sarvadharman parityaja mameka sharanam braja. In this material world, 19, neither the living entity nor entity himself nor others, friends and enemies, are the cause of material happiness and distress. But because of gross ignorance, the living entity thinks that he and others are the cause. That's a good one. Don't you think? Yes. Anybody who likes it, say Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Okay. Purport. In this verse, the word agnya is very significant. In the material world, all living entities are ignorant in different degrees. This ignorance continues very strongly in the mode of ignorance presented by material nature. One must therefore promote himself to the stage of goodness through his character and behavior, and then gradually come to the transcendental platform, or adhokshaja platform, in which he realizes both his position and the position of others. Everything is done under the superintendence of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The process by which the results of action are ordained is called niyatam, always working. And 20. This material world resembles the waves of a constantly flowing river. Therefore, what is a curse and what is a favor? What are the heavenly planets and what are the hellish planets? What is actually happiness and what is actually distress? Because the waves flow constantly, none of them has an eternal effect. Purport. Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur sings, Miche mayar boshe chacho beshe kacho hapudu bubai. My dear living entities within this material world, why are you being carried away by the waves of the modes of nature? Jiv Krishna Das e vishwas korleta orduko nai. If the living entity tries to understand that he is an eternal servant of Krishna, there will no longer be misery for him. Krishna wants us to give up all other engagements and surrender unto him. If we do so, where will the cause and effect of this material world be? There is nothing like cause and effect for the surrendered soul. There is nothing like cause and effect for the surrendered soul. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says in this regard that being put into this material world is like being thrown into a mine of salt. If one falls into a mine of salt, he tastes only salt wherever he goes. Similarly, this material world is full of miseries. The so-called temporary happiness of the world is also misery, but in ignorance we cannot understand this. That is the actual position. When one comes to his senses, when he becomes Krishna conscious, he is no longer concerned with the various conditions of this material world. He is not concerned with happiness or distress, curses or favors, or heavenly or hellish planets. He sees no distinctions between them.
21. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Unaffected by the conditions of the material world, he creates all conditioned souls by his own personal potency. We got to do something about the plastic on this earth. They're making big efforts now to clean up the oceans and everything, right? Good plastic. The Supreme The Supreme Personality of Godhead is one. Unaffected by the conditions of the material world, he creates all the conditioned souls by his own personal potency. Because of being contaminated by the material energy, the living entity is put into ignorance and thus into different conditions of bondage. Sometimes by knowledge, the living entity is given liberation. In Sattvaguna and Rajaguna, he is subjected to happiness and distress. Purport. The question may be raised, why the living entities are situated in different conditions and who has arranged this? The answer is that it has been done by the Supreme Personality of Godhead without anyone's help. The Lord has his own energies, prasya shaktir vividaiva shruyate, and one of them, namely the external energy, creates the material world and the varieties of happiness and distress for the conditioned souls under the supervision of the Lord. The material world consists of three modes of material nature, Sattvaguna, Rajoguna, and Tamoguna. By Sattvaguna, the Lord maintains the material world. By Rajoguna, he creates it, and by Tamoguna, he annihilates it. After the varieties of living entities are created, they are subject to happiness and distress according to their association. When they are in Sattvaguna, the mode of goodness, they feel happiness. When in Rajaguna, they are distressed. And when in Tamoguna, they have no sense of what to do or what is right and wrong. 22. The Supreme Personality of Godhead is equally disposed toward all living entities. Therefore, no one is very dear to him, and no one is a great enemy for him. No one is his friend, and no one is his relative. Being unattached to the material world, he has no affection for so-called happiness or hatred for so-called distress. He has no affection for so-called happiness or hatred for so-called distress. The two terms happiness and distress are relative. Since the Lord is always happy, for him there is no question of distress. 23. Although the Supreme Lord is unattached to our happiness and distress according to karma, and although no one is his enemy or favorite, he creates pious and impious activities through the agency of his material potency. Thus, for the continuation of the materialistic way of life, he creates happiness and distress, good fortune and bad, bondage and liberation, birth and death. Purport. Although the Supreme Personality of Godhead is the ultimate doer of everything, in his original transcendental existence, he is not responsible for the happiness and distress, or bondage and liberation of the conditioned souls. These are due to the results of the fruitive activities of the living entities within this material world. By the order of a judge, one person is released from jail and another is imprisoned, but the judge is not responsible for the distress and happiness of these different people. By the order of a judge, one person is released from jail and another is imprisoned, but the judge is not responsible for the happiness and distress of these different people is due to their own activities. Although the government is ultimately the supreme authority, the justice is administered by the departments of the government, and the government is not responsible for the individual judgments. Therefore, the government is equal to all the citizens. Similarly, the Supreme Lord is neutral to everyone, but for the maintenance of law and order, his supreme government has various departments, which control the activities of living entities. Another example given in this regard is that lilies open or close because of the sunshine, and thus the bumblebees enjoy or suffer. But the sunshine and the sun globe are not responsible for the happiness and distress of the bumblebees. 24. O Mother, you are now unnecessarily angry, but since all my happiness and distress are destined by my past activities, I do not plead to be excused or relieved from your curse. Although what I have said is not wrong, please let whatever you think is wrong be pardoned. Purport. Being fully aware of the results of one's karma, of how the results of one's karma accrue by the laws of nature, Chitraketu did not want to be released from Parvati's curse. Nonetheless, he wanted to satisfy her because although his verdict was natural, she was displeased with him. As a matter of course, Maharaj Chitraketu begged pardon from Parvati. Text 25. Sri Shukadeva Goswami continued, O King Parikshit, subduer of the enemy, after Chitraketu satisfied Lord Shiva and his wife, Parvati, he boarded his airplane and left as they looked on. When Lord Shiva and Parvati saw that Chitraketu, although informed of the curse, was unafraid, they smiled, being fully astonished by his behavior.
Thereafter, in the presence of the great sage Narada, the demons, the inhabitants of Siddhaloka, and his personal associates, Lord Shiva, who is most powerful, spoke to his wife Parvati, while they all listened. Lord Shiva said, My dear, beautiful Parvati, have you seen the greatness of the Vaishnavas? Being servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, they are great souls, and are not interested in any kind of material happiness. Purport. Lord Shiva, the husband of Parvati, told his wife, My dear Parvati, you are very beautiful in your bodily features. Certainly you are glorious, but I do not think that you can compete with the beauty and glory of devotees who have become servants of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Of course, Lord Shiva smiled when he joked with his wife in that way, for others cannot speak like that. The Supreme Lord, Shiva continued, is always exalted in his activities, and here is another example of how his wonderful influence upon King... Of course, Lord Shiva smiled when he joked with his wife in that way, for others cannot speak like that. The Supreme Lord, Shiva continued, is always exalted in his activities, and here is another example of his wonderful influence upon King Chitraketu, his devotee. Just see, although you cursed the king, he was not at all afraid or sorry. Rather, he offered respect to you, called you mother, and accepted your curse, thinking himself faulty. He did not say anything in retaliation. This is the excellence of a devotee. By mildly tolerating your curse, he has certainly excelled the glory of your beauty and your power to curse him. I can impartially judge that this devotee, Chitraketu, has defeated you and your excellence simply by becoming a pure devotee of the Lord. As stated by Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Toror api suhishnuna, just like a tree, a devotee can tolerate all kinds of curses and reversals in life. This is the excellence of a devotee. Indirectly, Lord Shiva forbade Parvati to commit the mistake of cursing a devotee like Chitraketu. He indicated that although she was powerful, the king, without showing any power, had excelled her power by his tolerance. 28. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead never fear any condition. Narayana parak sarve nakutashana bibhyati sarga pavarga narakeshu apituryarta darshina. Devotees solely engaged in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead Narayana never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. Purport: Parvati might naturally have inquired how devotees become so exalted. Therefore, this verse explains that they are Narayana Para, simply dependent on Narayana. They do not mind reverses in life because in the service of Narayana they have learned to tolerate whatever hardships there may be. They do not care whether they are in heaven or in hell. They simply engage in the service of the Lord. This is their excellence. Anukulyena Krishnanu Shilaram. They are liberally engaged in the service of the Lord, and therefore they are excellent. By using the word Bhritya Bhrityanam, the Lord Shiva pointed out that although Chitraketu provided one example of tolerance and excellence, all the devotees who have taken shelter of the Lord as eternal servants are glorious. They have no eagerness to be happy by being placed in the heavenly planets, becoming liberated, or becoming one with Brahman, the supreme effulgence. These benefits do not appeal to their minds. They are simply interested in giving direct service to the Lord. 29. Because of the actions of the Supreme Lord's external energy, the living entities are conditioned in contact with material bodies. The dualities of happiness and distress, birth and death, curses and favors, are natural byproducts of this contact in the material world. One more time. Because of the actions of the Supreme Lord's external energy, the living entities are conditioned in contact with material bodies. The dualities of happiness and distress, birth and death, curses and favors are natural byproducts of this contact in the material world. Purport. In Bhagavad Gita we find Mayadakshena prakriti suyate sacharacharam. The material world works under the direction of the goddess of Durga, the material energy of the Lord, but she acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is also confirmed in the Brahma Samhita. Shrishti stiti pralaya sarana shakti reka chayeva yasya bhuvanani viparati Durga. Durga, the goddess Parvati, the wife of Lord Shiva, is extremely powerful. She can create, maintain, and annihilate any number of universes by her sweet will, but she acts under the direction of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, not independently. Krishna is impartial, but because this is the material world of duality, such relative terms as happiness and distress, curses and favors, are created by the will of the Supreme. Those who are not Narayana Para, pure devotees, must be disturbed by this duality of the material world, whereas devotees who are simply attached to the service of the Lord are not at all disturbed by it. For example, Haridas Thakur was beaten with cane in 22 bazaars, but he was never disturbed. Instead, he smilingly tolerated the beating. Despite the disturbing dualities of the material world, devotees are not disturbed at all. Because they fix their minds on the lotus feet of the Lord and concentrate on the holy name of the Lord, they do not feel the so-called pains and pleasures caused by the dualities of this material world. 30. As one mistakenly considers a flower garland to be a snake or experiences happiness and distress in a dream, so in the material world, by lack of careful consideration, we differentiate between happiness and distress, considering one good and the other bad. Purport. The happiness and distress of the material world of duality are both mistaken ideas. In the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Antya 4.176, it is said, Dvaite bhadra bhadra gyan shabho manu dharmo e balo e mando e shabram. The distinctions between happiness and distress in the material world of duality are simply mental concoctions. For the so-called happiness and distress are actually one and the same. They are like the happiness and distress in dreams. A sleeping man creates his happiness and distress by dreaming, although actually they have no existence. The other example given in this verse is that a flower garland is originally very nice, but by mistake, for want of mature knowledge, one may consider it a snake. In this connection, there is a statement by Prabodhananda Saraswati, Vishvam Purna Sukhayate. Everyone in this material world is distressed by miserable conditions. But Srila Prabodhananda Saraswati says that this world is full of happiness. How is this possible? He answers, Yat karunya kataksha vaibhava tam gauram eva stumaha. A devotee accepts the distress of this material world as happiness only due to the causeless mercy of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. By his personal behavior, Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu showed that he was never distressed but always happy in chanting the Hare Krishna Mahamantra. One should follow in the footsteps of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and engage constantly in chanting the Mahamantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. Then he will never feel the distresses of the world of duality. In any condition of life, one will be happy if he chants the holy name of the Lord. In dreams, we sometimes enjoy eating sweet rice and sometimes suffer as if one of our beloved family members had died. Because the same mind and body exist in the same material world of duality when we are awake, the so-called happiness and distress of this world are no better than the false superficial happiness of dreams. The mind is the via medium in both dreams and wakefulness, and everything created by the mind in terms of sankalpa and vikalpa, acceptance and rejections. Okay. The mind is the medium in both dreams and wakefulness, and everything created by the mind in terms of sankalpa and vikalpa, acceptance and rejection, is called manodharma, or mental concoction. Via medium. No match. Why there's no match? Huh? Via media. It's not via medium. There's no via medium. It's called via media, a middle way. Via media. This says via medium. You see? There is no via medium. You can't change it.
Text 31. Anyway, it's a correction. It's a correction. Even now, it's correct, and therefore we correct things that are incorrect. Well, Prabhupada, yeah, but it's different. Via medium is different. Via medium is, the spiritual master is a via medium to Krishna. You're over here. There's a via medium, but here, the word is used differently. There's medium. The mind is a medium in both dreams and wakefulness. It's the medium by which Oh Lord, oh Mother of God, you said there would be days like this, and you were right. Therefore we correct these books so that the devotees may, by their own choice, stop making a mistake, so they can correct themselves. Jeez. Text 31. Persons engaged in devotional service to Lord Vasudeva, Krishna, have naturally perfect knowledge and detachment from this material world. Therefore, such devotees are not interested in the so-called happiness or so-called distress of this world. Purport. Here is the distinction between a devotee and a philosopher who speculates on the subject matter of transcendence. A devotee does not need to cultivate knowledge to understand the falsity or temporary existence of this material world. Because of his unalloyed devotion to Vasudeva, this knowledge and detachment are automatically manifested in his person. As confirmed elsewhere in Srimad Bhagavatam 127, Vasudevi Bhagavati Bhakti Yoga Prayojita Janaya Yasya Varagyam Jnanam Cha Yadahaitukam. One who engages in unalloyed devotional service to Vasudeva, Krishna, automatically becomes aware of this material world, and therefore he is naturally detached. This detachment is possible because of his high standard of knowledge. The speculative philosopher tries to understand that this material world is false by cultivating knowledge, but this understanding is automatically manifested in the person of a devotee without separate endeavor. The Mayavadi philosophers may be very proud of their so-called knowledge, but because they do not understand Vasudeva, Vasudevak Savamiti, they do not understand the world of duality, which is a manifestation of Vasudeva's external energy. Therefore, unless the so-called jnanis take shelter of Vasudeva, their speculative knowledge is imperfect. They simply think of becoming free from the contamination of the material world. But because they do not take shelter of the lotus feet of Vasudeva, their knowledge is impure. When they actually become pure, they surrender to the lotus feet of Vasudeva. Therefore, the absolute truth is easier to understand for a devotee than for jnanis who simply speculate to understand Vasudeva. Lord Shiva confirms this statement in the following verse. Neither I, Lord Shiva, nor Brahma, nor the Ashwani Kumaras, nor Narada, nor the other great sages who are Brahma's sons, nor even the demigods can understand the pastimes and personality of the Supreme Lord. Although we are part of the Supreme Lord, we consider ourselves independent, separate controllers, and thus we cannot understand his identity. Purport. Brahma Samhita states, Advaitam Achyutam Anarimananta Rupam Adyam Purana Purusham Navajovanam Cha Vedeshu Durlabha Madurlamam Atma Bhaktao Govindamadi Purusham Tamaham Pajami. I worship the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Govinda, who is the original person. He is absolute, infallible, and beginningless, and although expanded into unlimited forms, he is still the same original person, the oldest person, who always appears as a fresh youth. The eternal, blissful, all-knowing forms of the Lord cannot be understood even by the best Vedic scholars, but they are always manifest to pure, unalloyed devotees. Lord Shiva places himself as one of the non-devotees who cannot understand the identity of the Supreme Lord. The Lord, being Ananta, has an unlimited number of forms. Therefore, how is it possible for an ordinary common man to understand him? Lord Shiva, of course, is above the ordinary human beings, yet he is unable to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is not among the ordinary living entities. Lord Shiva, of course, is above the ordinary human beings, yet he is unable to understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Shiva is not among the ordinary living entities, nor is he in the category of Lord Vishnu. He is between Lord Vishnu and the common living entity. 33. He holds no one as very dear and no one as inimical. He has no one for his own relative, and no one is alien to him. He is actually the soul of all living entities. Thus he is the auspicious friend of all living beings, and is very near and dear to all of them. Purport. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, in his second feature, is the supersoul of all living entities. As one's self is extremely dear, the superself of the self is still more dear. No one can be the enemy of the friendly superself, who is equal to everyone. Relationships of dearness or enmity between the Supreme Lord and the living beings are due to the intervention of the illusory energy. Because the three modes of material nature intervene between the Lord and the living beings, these different relationships appear. Actually, the living entity, in his pure condition, is always very near and dear to the Lord, and the Lord is dear to him. There is no question of partiality or enmity. 34 and 35. This magnanimous Chitraketu is a dear devotee of the Lord. He is equal to all living entities and is free from attachment and hatred. Similarly, I am also very dear to Lord Narayana. Therefore no one should be astonished to see the activities of the most exalted devotees of Narayana, for they are free from attachment and envy. They are always peaceful, and they are equal to everyone. Purport. It is said, Vaishnavata Kriya Mudra Vigyaya Na Bhujaya. One should not be astonished to see the activities of exalted, liberated Vaishnavas. As one should not be misled by the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one should also not be misled by the activities of his devotees. Both the Lord and his devotees are liberated. They are on the same platform, the only difference being that the Lord is the master and the devotees are servants. Qualitatively, they are one and the same. In Bhagavad Gita 2.29, the Lord says, Samoham sarvabhuteshu nanme dveshostina priyaha ye bhajanti tumam bhaktya mayite te chuchapyaham. I envy no one, nor am I partial to anyone. I am equal to all. But whoever renders service unto me in devotion is a friend, is in me, and I am also a friend to him. From this statement by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, it is clear that the devotees of the Lord are always extremely dear to him. In effect, Lord Shiva told Parvati, both Chitraketu and I are always very dear to the Supreme Lord. In other words, both he and I are on the same level as servants of the Lord. We are always friends, and sometimes we enjoyed joking words between us. When Chitraketu loudly laughed at my behavior, he did so on friendly terms, and therefore there was no reason to curse him. Thus Lord Shiva tried to convince his wife Parvati that her cursing of Chitraketu was not very sensible. Here is a difference between male and female that exists even in the higher statuses of life. In fact, even between Lord Shiva and his wife. Lord Shiva could understand Chitraketu very nicely, but Parvati could not. Thus, even in the higher statuses of life, there is a difference between the understanding of a male and that of a female. It may be clearly said that the understanding of a woman is always inferior to the understanding of a man. In the Western countries there is now agitation to the effect that man and woman should be considered equal, but from this verse it appears that woman is always less intelligent than man. It is clear that Chitraketu wanted to criticize the behavior of his friend, Lord Shiva, because Lord Shiva was sitting with his wife on his lap. Then too, Lord Shiva wanted to criticize Chitraketu for externally posing as a great devotee, but being interested in enjoying with the Vidyadhari women. These were all friendly jokes. There was nothing serious for which Chitraketu should have been cursed by Parvati. Upon hearing the instructions of Lord Shiva, Parvati must have been very much ashamed for cursing Chitraketu to become a demon. Mother Parvati could not appreciate Chitraketu's position, and therefore she cursed him. But when she understood the instructions of Lord Shiva, she was ashamed.
That Brings us to the lunch break. Go Premanande. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Hari Bo. Nitai Gaura Hari Bo. Vanchakalpadrvisha Kripasanabhevacha Patitanam Pavanibhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Nantagodi Vaishnaviniki Jai. We'll see you all back here at 3:30. Hare Krishna.
Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, hey, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman, Nachari Armarman.